Hi, this is Pastor Wes Gunther, and welcome to Redeemed and Revived. This podcast reflects both the pulpit ministry at Cedar Hill Baptist Church of Dillsburg, Pennsylvania, as well as some studio-recorded lessons. Thank you for joining with us today.
Draw nigh to God, and He will draw nigh to you. I had an opportunity this summer as I've been working with Sam. Sam's our pastoral intern, and I shared this with him. This has been something that I have incorporated over the years that has helped me. You know, how do you build a message outline? What does that look like? I told him I like to use those questions. When I was in school, and I know that's evidently been a while now, but when I was in school, these were questions that an adverb answered. Who, when, where, why, how, to what extent. They were the questions an adverb would answer. And those questions, I think, are good for me as a pastor when I look to build a sermon outline. They're ones that I like to zero in on, whether it's very specifically or whether it's generally. I like to look at those things, like what the text that we're looking at, the passage that we're looking at, maybe the Bible person, character, story that we're looking at that morning. Who is it about? Who is it written to? When or where did it take place? What's the biblical timeline on that? What am I supposed to learn from it? How do I apply that to my life? Those are some of the general questions that I like to answer. And today I'm going to be very specific in that. Very specifically, how do I apply this? Draw nigh to God, and He will draw nigh to you. That is a great verse. That is a powerful verse. It is used on plaques and craft items and things people have hanging on their wall. It's been preached many times. All right, but how do I do that? Practically, literally. How do I employ that in my life? How do I do that? What does that mean to draw nigh to God? How do I put that to work? And so I wrote down some of these questions that I just shared and then some answers on some of them. First of all, how? How do I draw nigh? What does that look like? What does that mean to draw nigh? I put, number one, if I'm going to draw nigh to God, I put God first in all that I do. I put God first. I make Him the priority in my life. The decisions I make and the time that I spend. The places I go and the things that I do, that becomes a priority in my life. I put God first. That means all my attention, my time, my energy. God becomes first in all of those things. I was talking with someone about this a couple weeks ago. You know, there are times in our life that we have to do mundane tasks. I am not, and listen to me, and just to be very literal here, I am not a monk who lives in a monastery, who spends all my time thinking or trying to be close to God, and not worried about any other affairs, you know, because I have a family, I have a home, I have responsibilities. There are times I have to cut the grass, though I probably don't do it as much as I should. My Chihuahua doesn't think I do it as much as I should. When it's raining and the grass is a little high, the Chihuahua is like, oh, I'm not going out there. Not going out there, Pap. You know, it's a little too high. It's wet. But I need to cut my grass. I need to take care of my cars. I think I got 3 of them due for inspection right now. They all lined up. I got to make appointments and get the car into the shop. Those are some mundane tasks in our daily life. And Pastor Wes is up there saying, put God first. Do I still have to cut my grass? Yeah. I'll probably get a letter from the township if I stop cutting my grass. Probably have a bunch of mice and rodents and everything else coming around if I don't cut my grass. Do I need to do the mundane task of life? Yes. I've shared this before, but I find that some of my best prayer time, Some of my best personal worship time is riding around on a lawnmower. You know, when I'm riding on the lawnmower, the phone doesn't ring. Nobody's interrupting me. I don't know if I got an email or not. You know, when I'm riding around on the lawnmower, sometimes I hope my neighbors don't, but I can sing and nobody can hear it. Neighbors might disagree, but there's times I know I ride around on the lawnmower preaching the next Sunday's message as it's going through my mind, as I'm dwelling on it, as I'm preaching it to myself. And I do that, you know, parts of it, try to preach it to myself, to build the message, to work on it, and then write it down. I can do mundane tasks to the glory of God. I can put God first in all that I do, the time that I spend, the things that I'm working on. Desi and I were talking about this. We were, it was in the middle of our conversation the other night, but I said, you know, I don't think I have seen a movie of any sort in probably 10 years. I just haven't sat down and done that. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm not saying you can't have some good time or maybe relaxing time with your spouse to be able to do that, or with your kids. Great. But is the movie we're watching glorifying to God and God honoring? The things we're doing, the things we're listening to, the podcast we put on, the time we spend on social media, is it God honoring? The promise in James 4:8 is draw nigh to God. How do I do that? How do I draw nigh to Him? I put God first in all that I do. I wrote down along with that. So number 2, under how do I draw nigh to God, my prayer life becomes an integral part of my life. My prayer life has to be foundational in my life. I've preached on this years ago, but one of those next steps we're going to talk about in the weeks to come. I think we get into a habit of my prayer time becomes devotional, but not necessarily integrated into the entirety of my day. And I think that's good. For those that aren't maybe spending time in prayer, let's start with some devotional time, maybe in the morning or the evening or whenever that time works. Set that time aside that I'm spending some time in the Word and some time in prayer. That's good. But I think a lot of us get into a routine of where my prayer time is, 5-10 minutes a day. And then I'll pray again tomorrow about that time. Where the Bible tells us we're to pray without ceasing. And praying without ceasing is to be in a constant state of prayer, right? I should be able to pray conversationally with the Lord throughout the day. I try to compare that to, and I'm going to do it again, my conversation with my wife, with my spouse. Desi and I live together, obviously. We also work together. We're together most of the time. I do not start my day by handing her a cup of coffee. I do that part. I hand her a cup of coffee. I do that every day. And then having a 10-minute conversation with her, and then saying, all right, well, we'll talk again tomorrow morning. I wouldn't do that, right? That wouldn't be a very good relationship. No, I talk to her throughout the day as the opportunity is there to talk about things. Things we're working on, things we're dealing with, things we see, things that are on our mind. I'm talking to her conversationally throughout the day. I don't start my conversation with her with an introduction or end it with a salutation of some sort. My conversation is on and off throughout as we have that opportunity to talk. I believe we should have that type of conversation with the Lord throughout the day. where we can tell the Lord things that are on our mind, where we don't have to start with, "Oh God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob." It doesn't have to be a big introduction. Maybe we shouldn't even end our prayer every time with "Amen." Because if we're praying without ceasing, it's just an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing opportunity to communicate, to say something else, to add to. "Lord, thank you for this. Lord, I need help with that. Lord, give me wisdom with this. Lord, thank you for the sunrise this morning. Thank you for the safety here. Lord, I need you there." It becomes conversational throughout the day. It becomes an integral part of my day. Draw nigh to God so that my conversation isn't limited to a snippet in the day, but rather becomes just an integral part of my ongoing daily walk with Him. I need to put God first in all that I do. I need my prayer life to become an integral part of my life. Second point, though, and that's the what. We talked about how. The second point, what does that look like? How does that show itself? If I've drawn nigh to Him, or if I'm drawing nigh to Him, then what does that look like? How would I see that in my life? What would be the signs that, okay, I can evaluate and say, I'm closer to the Lord now, I'm closer in my walk with Him now than I used to be or I was, so I'm growing. Because I think we need to evaluate that, because there may be times we go, you know what? I'm not as close to Him now as I was. And I need to recalibrate. I need to get things back on track. If you remember, we were a couple different times over the years, we've gone through the Quieting a Noisy Soul series, Dr. Berg's series. We've done that a couple different times. One of the things he talks about as he's an amateur pilot, is recalibrating the plane. Because it wants to track off. It tracks off because, I don't know why this has become a thing in our society today, but the world is round. It's not flat. There are some things we know scientifically. And so the earth is round, and his plane and the guidance in His small plane will track off because of the sphere of the earth. It'll start to get off. You have to recalibrate from time to time, recalibrate. And he used that as such a perfect illustration of that being the case in our spiritual life. There's times we need to stop, look, and say, you know what? I'm getting off a little bit. I'm not as close to the Lord as I was. I'm not as excited about the things of the Lord as I was. I'm not spending as much time in prayer as I used to. I need to recalibrate, get back online, back where I'm supposed to be, because the world wants us to track away. We can get real busy and real distracted in just the affairs of life until we track off. We need to recalibrate, get back online. What does drawing nigh look like? I wrote down 3 things. 1, I think like a Christian first. Philippians 4:8. You can leave James. We use that as our launching pad today. But Philippians chapter 4. I think like a Christian first, not later. That's my first reaction. I think like a Christian. Philippians 4. Let's read verse 7 and 8. Verse 7, one of my favorite verses because I refer to that verse all the time. Philippians 4:7, and the peace of God which passeth all understanding. You've heard me say that often, or refer to that often. He can give a peace that the world doesn't understand, a peace that passeth human understanding. There it is, Philippians 4:7. The peace of God which passeth all understanding shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Now here's a list. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, Whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. This is where our mind's supposed to be. Our mind's supposed to be on these type of things. Just, pure, lovely, good, true, and honest. We get bombarded with the affairs of this world that want our mind to be on anything else. The bad, the corrupt, makes us cynical. I don't know, we've said this, but it is becoming ever increasing. I don't believe anything I see on the internet. I don't believe any of it. Every photo, every video they put out, everything is tampered, messed with. Some of the videos they had of the sea surge coming in North Carolina, fake. All fake. None of that happened. I'm not saying some of the sea surge didn't come in. I'm saying the videos I saw, fake. Stuff washing away that didn't wash away. Water coming in where it didn't. Everything, you're looking at it like, I don't believe any of this. This didn't happen. That didn't happen. You look at things, we become cynical to everything. We become questioning everything. We doubt everything. I wonder how often then we pick up our Bibles and we read something and the devil's like, I don't know about that either, right? Maybe that's not true either. Our minds become very twisted towards that which is wrong and the evil and the bad, and we just, that's so much of what we see, that's so much of what we're bombarded with, that's so much of what comes our way, that we look at it and we start to question. I find myself more and more with a very wary eye on the things that are coming across our screens and our social media and our intake. So much of it is wrong. So much of it is skewed. So much of it is corrupted. So where's my mind supposed to be? Well, the Bible tells us. Things that are true, honest, of good report, pure and lovely. Think on these things. Or we're going to drive ourselves crazy because our mind being corrupted by the constant influx of what the world wants us to think about, where the world wants us to dwell on, what our culture wants us to dwell on. I need to think like a Christian first. Number 2, I wrote down I need to respond like a Christian first. My response to people, my response to the things that are happening, my response to people's actions. I said this a couple weeks ago, and many of you commented on this out the door. But just being someone who lives on the East Shore and drives the Harrisburg Beltway, this is put to my test every single drive, because people are crazy. Especially behind the wheel on Interstate 83, They're just nuts. People get mad. People get rude. They're just. I say all the time when I'm driving, well, it's a good thing that guy's the only one in a hurry today. None of the rest of us have to be anywhere, but they'll just run you off the road to get to where they want to go. People can be rude. So what's my response? Am I supposed to, floor the car so they can't get in? Or not that I've ever done that. This week. Yeah. Right, our response, right? What's our response to the nature of people? We can literally ask ourselves, what would Jesus do if he was driving on Interstate 83, Well, he wouldn't retaliate. He wouldn't respond the way we want to, that I think our flesh wants to. Love and kindness and understanding. It's not easy. I think it gets harder all the time. I need to respond like Jesus would respond. Of course, I need to love like a Christian's supposed to love. Again, I'm talking about what does drawing nigh look like. I need to think like a Christian. We see that in Philippians 4:8. I need to respond like a Christian should. I need to love like a Christian should. John 13. John 13. John 13, starting in verse 34. The first part of this chapter, Jesus is washing the disciples' feet. So the book of John, a big part of the book of John is Jesus interacting with his disciples really the last hours of his life. It gives us a much more in-depth view of that interaction, that conversation, the things he was teaching them. And by John 13, I'm saying that because we're fairly early in the book of John here, right? We're only on chapter 13. Chapter 13 of the book of John, he's already washed the disciples' feet in the upper room. Judas has gone out. He's going to betray Christ. We come down to verse 34. John 13:34. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another, as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. Now, right there is not the end of his conversation, but let's pause for a minute. There's the command. I want you to love one another. As I've loved you, I want you to love one another. I want you to show it. And then he says, or answers the question, why? What's the result of that? Why does he command that? Verse 35, by this, that love for one another, by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. He re-emphasized it. By this, and I'm talking about the love for one another, by this shall all men know that you're my disciples. How is the world going to know that you're a Christian? The primary way they're going to know is not by the fact you go to church on Sunday morning or carry a Bible or wear a suit or whatever. They should know that you're a Christian by the way you love one another. Because your love should be in contrast to the way the world loves. The world loves based on what they receive, right? I love you if you love me. I love you if I'm getting. I'll give to you if I'm receiving from you. Jesus' love is, he died while we were yet sinners. He died for us. He loved us before we first loved him. His love was not contingent. So I need to love like a Christian does. Number 3, I looked at how. How do I draw nigh? 2, what does it look like? 3, I wrote down where. Where do I draw nigh? Like, where in my Christian life? Where is that? Where do I see that in my Christian life? And I wrote down a couple things. Number 1, I draw nigh to God's character. I draw nigh to his character. I learned to study his character and therefore want to emulate his character. Things like God is holy, God is righteous, God is just. There's many character traits of the Almighty. I just wrote down a couple. God says, be ye holy, for I am holy. That gives us some idea where in my Christian life I should be drawing nigh. Where is that in my Christian life I should be working on? Well, holiness is something I think we can all agree. I hope. We haven't hit yet. Not this side of our resurrected body. We're not going to. So we have things to work on in our Christian life in order to draw nigh in our holiness, in our righteousness. The Beatitude, blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness. How's your hunger and thirsting? How's my hunger and thirsting? Is that what I'm hungering and thirsting after? Or do I find I'm hungering and thirsting after other things? Material things. Cultural things. Worldly things. Things I think I want or need or am I hungering and thirsting after righteousness? If I'm going to draw nigh, where is that in my Christian life that becomes a reality? It becomes a reality as I follow God's character, His holiness, His righteousness. He's just. He's loving. I wrote down also, I draw nigh to God's person, the person of God. Brother Walker, in his Sunday school class this morning, talked about some of these things. For He is the Creator. He's the Deliverer. It's two of the ones Brother Walker mentioned on his slides this morning. The Creator. If He's the Creator of everything, it puts into perspective what my spot is, where I am. If He's the Creator of everything, it gives me an awe of His power, of what He is capable of what He has done, of what He has provided. He's the Creator. He's our Deliverer. In Sunday school, Brother Walker was talking about the nation of Israel, the Ten Commandments. He delivered them from the hand of Pharaoh and the Egyptians. Likewise, and this was talked about in Sunday school, likewise, He's delivered us from the bondage of sin. He's our deliverer. He did something I couldn't do for myself. Just as the Israelites could not by themselves get out of the slavery in Egypt. They couldn't do it by themselves. They didn't have the power to. They were slaves. They were not armed. They didn't have any military. They didn't have any might. They didn't have any power. They didn't have a leader. God brought along a leader, and God provided the power. He did the same for you and I. I had no answer for my sin problem. I was lost, without hope. He's the deliverer. He brought Jesus Christ to be my Redeemer, to save me from my sins. And so if I'm thinking about what it means to draw nigh to Him, I need to have a perspective of who He is and what He has done. His character, which was His holiness and His righteousness and His love and His justice. But also the person of who He is. I think that reveals much of what He has done, or is revealed in what He has done. For He is the Creator. He's the sustainer. Isn't that great? He didn't just make the world, spin it off into space, and say, I'll check on you in 1,000,000 years. There are those that might believe that, but that would be not the God of the Bible. He created and is intimately involved with the affairs of mankind and of what we are doing. Then He's our deliverer from our sin problem. He's our future. He's provided a place and is preparing a place for you and I to be with Him for eternity. He's our Father. The disciples said, Lord, teach us to pray. Jesus said, okay, pray in this manner. Our Father, which art in heaven. That's how the Lord directed His disciples to pray. Who to pray to? Who to pray to? When we come before the Lord in prayer, we come to Him as our Father. We are welcomed. We are invited. We're given a seat at the table. We have that relationship with Him. We're talking about drawing nigh to God. We need to see Him as He wants us to see Him. Holy and righteous and just. But as our Father, who loves us and has delivered us and has made all things for us. I wrote down last, I need to draw nigh to God's desire. What's His heart? The Bible tells us it is God's will that all men come to repentance. That means He loves everyone. He cares for everyone. He died for everyone. He wants all to be saved. Do I have that same desire? I think it's easy in our society and in our culture to prefer some over others. The Lord doesn't prefer anyone over anybody else. He died for all. He loves all. He cares for all. That's the heart of God. Listen, James 4:8. I just wanted to leave you with that thought today. Draw nigh to God. He will draw nigh to you. God, listen, I didn't say this yet. Probably should. God doesn't move, right? He's always the same place. It's just very practical that as I draw closer to him, he is closer to me. I'm the one that needs to move. I'm the one that needs to change. I'm the one that needs to draw closer to him. He's always there. He's always present. He's always constant. Nothing changes with God. I just need to draw closer to him.
Thank you for listening to Redeemed. For more information, you can email us at pastorwesgunther@gmail.com. Thank you.